friend of mine who was a neurosurgeon happened to attend a lecture by Dr. Garth Nicholson. And Garth is, or was the chairman of the tumor biology department down at MD Anderson. He said that the Gulf War veterans were coming back with, and they were infected with this organism called Mycoplasma fermentans incognitus, which is a very unusual type of a microorganism. It could have been a biological weapon. There's no doubt about it, okay? Saddam Hussein at the time had over 80 PhD level research scientists in Iraq that were doing research on mycoplasmas at that time, right before the war started. Okay, so it could have been a biological weapon. There was a researcher down in Tulane, I forget her name now, I think she may be mentioned in the article, but it's in my stuff now. She did a very small study where she looked at maybe 100 or so Gulf War veterans, all of whom were sick with this stuff, all of whom were positive for the mycoplasmas. And she found that her control group was those who were deployed and those who stayed here, but they're all sick. Okay. Now the ones who were deployed obviously were exposed to the other things. They were exposed to the sarin gas. They were exposed to oil well, fire, smoke. They were exposed to, maybe they were in the dog tags and taking the PV pills there appropriately. All that stuff, okay? But the group who stayed here in the United States had none of that. But they're both sick, okay? And what she found was the only common thing, there's two common things about them. Number one, they both got these A and B shots. The group that stayed here got them here in the States before they were deployed. The others got them here also in the States and then were deployed, or some of them received them over there. And they all had antibodies to a substance called squalene. So we started doing these paper researches and Freedom of Information Act requests and all that kind of stuff. And we found that squalene is actually a triterpene oil, comes from shark's liver, and it was in a proprietary ingredient to an adjuvant. What an adjuvant is you put it in a shot, and what it does is it kicks up your immune system's response to that shot. In highly experimental vaccines that were being experimented upon to produce an AIDS vaccine. How did they get it? Okay, we go back to the bacterial vectors. In the 1980s, they were experimenting with giving genetically engineered bacteria containing one gene from an AIDS virus to folks. And this is done like places like Thailand, Cambodia, and places outside the U.S. And remember, our troops were giving vaccine A, vaccine B, and we don't know what it was. Now, those were the classified ones, vaccine A, vaccine B. Most of the troops do not have their shot records now. They've disappeared. It appears that our GIs are being used in a terribly, I think, in a terribly contrived, huge clinical trial, shall we say, to test AIDS vaccines. That's the best thing that it looks like to me from the stuff that we turned up. Camisea was a huge ammunition dump about 25 miles south of Nasiriyah on the Euphrates River. Okay. This ammunition dump was the size of several super Walmarts. Plus it included about 14 pits that were dug outside in the sand that were not buildings, they were just pits that contained all kinds of munitions. They were about the size of a football field. So they blew the stuff up, and what goes up comes down. And I think it was like 1,500 guys got a letter that they may have been exposed to low-level sarin. You know, and so that grew to 2,500, then 5,000, then I don't know. It's probably about 150 or 200,000 people got the Camisea letter after that because they were exposed to it either downwind or directly in the area. You know, one of the first things I ask my troops when they come in and I'm starting to treat them, I said, "Did you get a Camisea letter?" So I want to know if they've been exposed to the sarin. And I try to explain to them, if you've got the mycoplasma, we can do something to help you with that. The sarin, we can't. But the damage that's done has been done, and you'll have it the rest of your days. Gary knows quite a bit about that too. I don't know if he told you, but he was on the EOD team that actually did the destruction of Camisea.
When we blew up Camisea in the open pit, because I knew we put chemicals in the air. I knew we put that shit in the air. I knew that we just contaminated our own cells. And I'm saying, what have we done? I know of 8 people that have committed suicide out of my own battalion. The last one's been a year and a half ago because they couldn't get help. That they keep getting told that it's in their head. They're making it up. I mean, I had a doctor at a neurology clinic up at the VA hospital that looked dead at me, says, I know you have neuropathy, I know you have sensory neuropathy, but it just doesn't make sense that you're hurting as bad as you acclaim and you showing that you're hurting. And my wife was there. My wife Susan was there, and she had to stop me because I was about to go after her. He was damn near calling me a fake, and it really pissed me off. I'm talking really well right now because I took medicine to be halfway decent for you. I really did, and she can tell you that. But I don't want to see myself that way.
He's not able to get his thoughts out in a good way. No, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I mean, like, if, like, this is a good moment, you know, like, he's able to, there's a couple of ums, and there might be a couple of stutters, but compared to 2 days ago, I couldn't even have a conversation with them on the phone. It was hard for him to finish a sentence, to finish an actual word. I mean, it's gotten now where everybody kind of like tries to help out, and like he'll sit there and try to say a word, we'll go on to try to say it, and then so he can, once he's focusing on that he's stuttering, it's or not losing his train of thought, it's harder for him to get it going.
As these guys have come into your office, let's take Gary for instance, he shares his story with us. You know, for 17 years or abouts, he's walking around saying, man, I lost a memory, I've got numbness here, you know, he's got all these ailments, and doctors are kind of saying, look, we've tested you, there's nothing wrong, blah, blah. And then they stumble into your office, and you've got a totally different perspective on this thing.
Absolutely do.
What's their reaction to you, I guess, when you kind of acknowledge it? I mean, I guess that's kind of a simple one, but how do they react with you when you...
Kind of, you know, a lot of times it's anger. Because, these guys have been floating around for 10 years, been, or more sick. This thing is fatal. If you get, enough of the bugs in you, it'll kill you, And I've lost some of them. Some of them are relieved because now they finally know what's going on, or they have an explanation as to what's going on to them. A lot of relief.
He's getting help. It's 10 times better than what it was when it first started. When this transition period was going on where his health started to decline and change, I didn't like it. I didn't like how this man was so stubborn and hard-headed, just still is that way, is slowly going.